one of the most important things that we learned is that suspensions were unequal around the city, depending on school by school, race by race, gender by gender. So one of the things we have tried very hard to do is to make suspensions more uniform. What is the right reason to suspend a student? We have had students suspended for 10 days because they were wearing a hat in class, versus another school where that might be a minor offense or something. So I think we really are working very hard to develop a universal decision on what is suspendable, what is the right amount of days. I would never say you can't suspend a student, but you have to have a series of steps. We have put into many of our schools more restorative justice practice, which simply means hiring an outside agency like Morningside, PBIS, strategies that are proven by research that in training teachers, they can do a better job of calming students down and dealing with students in a different way. The other thing we've done is we started to retrain our school safety agents so that instead of escalating issues in some schools, they can de-escalate issues. The idea of having students talk to teachers in small groups, having school safety agents join and get to know the kids who are most problematic before they have to do something like giving them a warrant or a suspension. I was a principal for 10 years. In my 10 years, I suspended one student. Mostly in the cases, and I had kids who did some really strange things, but my first strategy was to bring the parents in, to get some kind of sense what's going on in the home. Is there a different kind of discussion? Maybe this child needs to see the guidance counselor. I'm not a feel-good kind of person most of the time. Does he need to see the guidance counselor once a week so we can get to the root of the problem? Suspending a child to put him out in the street or to put him in alternative is not going to change the behavior. So we need to look at what is the behavior, what's causing the behavior, and then what's the appropriate measure. Principals are, by law, and I expect superintendents, and I've called a few in on this, to report it in what they call ORS. There's an OR system where you have OLRS, all these initials, where you put in a suspension, and then you call it in, and if it's a high-level suspension, you have to get permission. But any principal, and by all means, they can certainly call me. They call me on everything. This happened in my school, and I wasn't allowed to do something. I don't buy it as a very frequent occurrence, but I do believe we have to invest a lot more time and energy, and that's what we're doing with the mental health, in retraining teachers on how to deal with kids who have real serious issues. By the same token, there are kids who need to be suspended, or we just had an issue 2 weeks ago. We removed a student from a school, never to go back again. Not just a suspension, but you will never go back to that school. So I do think there's a lot of work to be done, but I do agree with the mayor that the city and the state are not using the same measures, and we need to get on the same page, because sometimes what you read in the newspapers is half-truths, and we need to be able to all use the same language and the same measures across the board.
We're not talking about a student wearing a hat.
I understand, but also...
I mean, I taught for almost 7 years. I obviously never really had a disciplinary problem. But when you do have a disruptive child, it's not just the one child, it's the entire class that's affected.
Absolutely. But that's why we need to do the retraining.
And let me rephrase the question real
Okay.
quick. Then we can assume that supervisors and teachers are not being told that they can't report disciplinary issues.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
No, and by the way, we have at every borough field office people called Student Support Services. And one of the things that we just did an in-house evaluation of some of these services, and what they're saying to us is that they're very good at when principals call them, they're good at de-escalating issues, but what we need to do more of is how do we prevent these issues. And one of the things, I mean, it's a corollary, although it's not necessarily tied in. I think May 17th, we're having a day called Team Up Day, where we've asked, I think, 300 some odd schools in the city to team up with their local precincts. So we can start looking at bringing people into the schools to talk to kids about correct behaviors and how do you look at your police officers. And the same thing, we are having an award ceremony actually this week for school safety agents that have gone above and beyond to create a culture in their schools of productive climate. So we can de-escalate and prevent, but by all means, if something serious is wrong, then by all means, you have to go to the extreme.
Yes, Senator, just quick addition. Thank you again for your service to the New York City schools. But I was a public school parent
So was I.
For the entire time of both my kids' education, I'm very familiar with the fact if there's a disruptive kid in the classroom, it can affect everyone. We don't want an absence of reporting. We want everything reported. We're saying the solution, as the chancellor just said powerfully from her 50-year career as an educator, sometimes you need a suspension. There's a lot of times when there's another tool. We want to know anything that's going on. We want to engage the parents. I'm going to give you a traditional thought here. Engage the parents to help us address the issue with their child. So it must be addressed and resolved. We just don't believe suspension should be used as often as it was in the past.
Thank you.
Senator Peralta.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to congratulate you, Mr. Mayor and Chancellor, for the 20% increase in graduation rates since mayor control has been implemented. The 92% attendance increase in the last decade, which has been the highest. The decrease in the dropout rate, which is down to 9%, and the huge success of pre-K. I want to congratulate you on those issues.
Thank you very much.
I have a two-part question, and I think it goes to the heart of why we're here. First, do you believe that since we representatives on the state level are, in a way, investors, since we invest a large amount of money in the educational system, both on the operation and in the capital end, and since we also represent hundreds of thousands of constituents in the city and outside of the city of New York, do you believe that we should have, as a body, an opportunity to hold you, the mayor, accountable every couple of years on mayor control? And if you do, if that's the case, if you believe that we should have that right, since we are investing large amount of money on educational system, why the 7 years? The 7 years that you're requesting, and I understand that some of your part of your answer may be based on what your predecessor got, but some may argue that it was 7 years too long, what your predecessor got. So why the 7 years? Why not 2 or 3 years, for example, where you can have mayor control go into a year after a certain mayor becomes mayor? So as opposed to giving 7 years where we will not have, and I understand, you benefit of the doubt and being optimistic, you would hope that you would get reelected. But let's just say that, God forbid, that you don't get reelected and there's someone else that becomes mayor. Then if we give 7 years, we won't have an opportunity to talk to that particular mayor in 7 years until after that mayor is up. So why not have it 2 or 3 years instead of the 7 that you're requesting?
Well, Senator, I would differentiate the ability to talk as an investor and as partners, which I was very happy to do, for example, at the budget hearing. And I'm happy to be doing now. And I think that's a good and normal part of the process, that we work together, all of us. I said at the beginning, we couldn't have achieved what we achieved on pre-K without all of you. We couldn't have achieved what we achieved on after school without all of you. We should be in a constant dialogue. And I'm very happy to account for what we've achieved and take the questions and talk it through any time. But that's a different question than the governance structure, in my view. The governance structure should rise above any question of who the person elected is, or what party they're a member of, or what their ideology is. As I said at the beginning, what an interesting situation that unites Michael Bloomberg, Rudy Giuliani, and me. We all agree, we're absolutely in lockstep, that mayoral control is the right way to get things done for the kids, and that it creates the most essential accountability we can ask for in government. Hold one person accountable, and the public can hire or fire that person. In my view, and the other point is that it's far superior to what was there before, and there is no third way. I've not heard a single offer of an alternative system that would work better. So when I add up all those pieces, I would say to you, it was authorized for 7 years, renewed for 6 more. We believe that 7-year mark proved to be very successful, that the experience, the first 7 years of mayoral control were unquestionably a success, and that the numbers that we've presented today on graduation rate and test scores and the increased safety in the schools, et cetera, started by my predecessor, even though we had our disagreements, we've been able to build on it and add a whole host of new elements, is a proof point about why mayoral control works. So I would argue that mayoral control as a governing system should be ratified for a substantial amount of time so we can keep the work of helping our kids moving. But in terms of the constant dialogue that we should be in, either in a group setting like this or individual settings, of course I believe in that simultaneously. What I wouldn't want to see, and I think your question very fairly raises kind of a counter reality, which is that the decisions were made based on who won an election or what their philosophy is. Well, the people in New York City are responsible for making that decision. We're in a representative government, but we ultimately all defer to the people. If the people choose mayoral control because they support a candidate who believes in mayoral control, or the people choose a certain course for our schools, that's their choice. And I would hope we're going to work with the person who wins in either situation, whether they're in our party or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Hoylman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for holding this hearing. I think it's very important that we have public hearings on such important issues. After all, we are discussing the future of our economy and the basis upon which we operate a deliberative democracy. So there's really nothing more important than the management of our public school system. I wanted to point out to you that we've not really heard from a single individual here, other than perhaps some polling data that shows that some New Yorkers are split on the idea of mayoral control, but all of the information you presented today points in the other direction, and very strongly so. And as my colleague just mentioned, graduation rates up 20% under the model of mayoral control, attendance rates, academic performance, the big ideas that you're able to push through, like pre-K, the wonderful progress you've made in community schools. By the way, my daughter now wears eyeglasses, prescribed to her at age 5 because of your program for vision in the schools. And the increase in parental involvement, something I hear as a public school parent. The statistic you show is 38% improvement. But one thing that I think it's almost hard to put your finger on is the fact that mayoral control has, in my opinion, reduced the level of rancor and dissension and antagonism among a number of stakeholders that are so important to the management of our school system, whether it be our teachers, whether it be our administrators, our public school parents, the local community. The fact that you're able to present a coherent, logical, and responsive management structure, I think gives a lot of New Yorkers confidence that if they do have a problem, they know where to go. So I wanted to point that out to you as something that isn't as tangible, and also point out that mayoral control is working all across the country. There are cities, Mr. Chair, the Center for American Progress recently released a report that shows that there were resource management and student achievement gains in cities, not just New York, New Haven, Connecticut, Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Hartford, Harrisburg, Boston, Providence, Rhode Island. So this isn't such a shocking revelation today that your success has been sustained and tangible. I think we're seeing it all across the country. So I guess I'll close with a question about how you think we, what your interaction has been with some of the people who have the biggest stake in the future of our school system, which are big employers. Mm-hmm. And I know we have a witness list of a number of folks from the business community who are going to speak on behalf of mayoral control. What are they saying about it?
Well, thank you very much, Senator, for the question. I've been very struck by how strongly business leaders feel we need mayoral control of education. It's very consistent. And again, to Senator Peralta's question, these are some people who agree with me on a number of areas. There's some people who disagree with me on a number of areas, but still believe fundamentally that we need coherent governance, we need accountability. I think they use their own values in terms of management and look at this, and it much more resembles what they would do within their own organizations in terms of clear lines of authority, real accountability measures, consequences if things don't work. And so I've been very appreciative of the support we've received, widespread swath of the business community. The technology sector is a great example where they are, 300,000 jobs in New York City. I would dare say tremendously important to the future of New York State that technology sector continue to grow in New York City. The technology sector leaders have been adamant that they need our school system to become more and more effective. And they believe in initiatives like computer science for all and pre-K. But they understand these things have to happen quickly and urgently, and that can only happen through a mayoral control system. So we have come to, all of us assume that we're living in a very partisan age, but there are moments where people agree, and there are moments where people agree across partisan lines. You'll see, in addition to the business support, tremendous support from labor. Again, is it a perfect consensus? No, but I can say, with a certain wry smile on my face, that consensus is a hard thing to come by in New York City, and in the scheme of things, this is an area where I think there's more agreement than most in public policy, and certainly a lot of very serious people care deeply about the future of New York City, really are deeply involved in this effort to preserve mayoral control and strengthen it for the future.
Can I just,
Please.
And I just want to add that since I've been through every system in 50 years, there was a time when the time of chancellors was 2 years or less. Because if there was a public disagreement, it destabilized the system. And I worked under many chancellors, and I liked a lot of them. And they were here today, gone tomorrow, because there was a disagreement publicly. And it meant that all the principals were a little bit, what do we do now? Or the teachers weren't settled. You need stability, you need consistency, you need to say, these are the promises I made, these are the promises I'll keep. And if it's going to constant shovel across this country, the average tenure of superintendents is 2.5 years. And that says a lot about the instability of education. So I believe this is not just about because it's the right thing to do, it's because the people in the trenches, the teachers, the principals, need that stability.
And one more point on that, our whole school system has needed that stability for a long time. And that's why I think it's important that people also have guarantees that there's going to be a governance structure they can depend on. That's, I think, what we would yearn for the future is an even more stable, professional, effective approach to education, something that often eluded us in the past. But people knowing that the governance structure is set, and now we can get to work deepening the reforms, deepening the improvements, I think that's the best thing for all the people who are trying to educate our kids.
As a public school parent of a 5-year-old, I just wanted to tell you how appreciative I am, and keep up the good work. And for the record, I strongly support renewing mayoral control, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator DeFrancisco.
Before I ask any questions, I just want to express my great dismay that Senator Hoylman didn't bring his daughter to an ophthalmologist or an optometrist or someone before she went to school. She had to rely on a public institution to find out she needs.
Can I point out, if I may, I did, and they missed the diagnosis. It was the public school system that found it.
Oh, okay. Very good.
One more point for us. Thank you. And actually, you're in a phenomenal school as well, so.
Very good. And did you sue the ophthalmologist for malpractice?
I think that's your job, not mine.
Oh, well, I won't answer that, but.
Thank you.
But specifically, I had a few questions. You had mentioned, it's been mentioned a couple of times since I've been here, that there's only two systems, the old system and this system, as far as mayoral control. Can you just refresh my memory? And the old system, for example, in a teacher's contract, who did the negotiations and who made the decision as to the outcome?
I'll let the chancellor speak to it, having lived in all levels of the old system. I can certainly affirm to you it was not the mayor, but go ahead, Chancellor.
No, the negotiations were always done as part of the larger DOE, whatever the central unit was, and it was done for the whole city. So, but it was not, I don't believe the mayor was ever involved. I really don't know about the negotiations per se.
Okay, but do you know who made the final decision? Was it the board that made the final decision?
Most
Or-
likely. No.
And
I mean,
someone,
there were actually 4 different systems. When I started teaching, there was a total centralized. No decisions were made that were not made at what the infamous 110 Livingston Street. Everything was decided there. Then we went to community school boards, but no community school board negotiated their own contracts. This was all done centrally again.
centrally under some education department, not by the mayor's
Yeah, the
education
chancellor.
department?
I'm-
The
Chancellor's-
chancellor, with, the board chose the chancellor, no, the board chose the chancellor, and the.
Chancellor did not get involved in most of the negotiations, I think.
So somebody did, somebody
Yeah.
made the decision. Does anybody know?
It was a mess.
There's a good note.
I love this. It was a messy 3-way negotiation. And generally, you know, I also lived through the 1968 teacher strike. There was a lot of dissension in a lot of the other systems.
Three-way negotiation, who are the 3 parties?
Well, I would say the mayor's office, the board of trustees at the central office, and the unions. That would be 3 ways.
Okay, so ultimately, would the mayor have to give the okay for that salary increase?
Yeah, I did not participate in that element of the system, so I don't want to
Okay,
give you a specific answer. What I can say, I want to restate what I said at the beginning. The current system, with pure mayoral control, pure accountability, when it comes to negotiation of a contract, like every other labor contract, my Office of Labor Relations negotiates, and I have to approve on behalf of the people. That was just not the case under the previous system. It was not
Okay.
as clear as that.
And just a suggestion, we might want to get a chair for this guy, because he's jumping up and down here, and
Yeah.
he's certainly capable of sitting at the big table.
I would agree with that. I'm confused why he isn't, Senator. I appreciate that, because
All
he
right.
was at the budget hearing, so I don't understand why he was left us.
Okay, now with respect.
Senator Felder's taking direct action. Thank you, Senator. That's good.
All right, now, following up on it, so the latest contract that was negotiated was by the mayor's office
Of Labor Relations.
okay,
And the chancellor.
and the chancellor.
Right.
Now, please just explain briefly what the new contract was. 2014, was it negotiated?
Yes.
Okay. I see salary increases for 2013, 1%, 14, 1%, 15, 1%, 16, 1.5%, 17, 2.5%, 18, 3%, which is somewhat comparable to at least those contracts that have been negotiated for other units.
Correct.
Okay. What I don't understand is then there's lump sum payments. 2015, 12.5%. 17, 12.5%. 18, 19, and 20, 25% each. What does that mean?
I'm going to explain in broad terms, because one, I'm not a lawyer, two, I'm not a labor relations specialist, but, and we'll certainly have, if you
Yep.
like, our commissioner go into detail, but I'll give you the broad stroke. So when we came into office, as you may know, we had none of our.
Can I interrupt you, because there's
Please.
a lot of people. You've approved the contract, you must, these lump sum payments, they must mean something, and what are they, 25% of what? And how does that affect the annual increases in these later years?
Yeah, so I'm going to do my best 2 years later to give you the right summary. When I came to office, there were no labor contracts settled. We had the entire workforce not under contract. Now, I believe you and I might share a classification as fiscally responsible. And so the mandate I gave my team was we needed to settle the contracts. It was not appropriate to have our workforce not under contract, but we had to do it in a way that was fiscally prudent, because this was going to have a long-term impact on the city. In fact, the uncertainty of our labor relations being unresolved was creating a huge question mark for budget monitors, rating agencies, et cetera, and for the future of the city. So I said, I need long-term contracts, I need them to be fiscally sound. Remembering that different unions had their contracts expired at different moments, to construct a pathway to resolution was a little different for each union. But what we said was, once we established a clear pattern, we were going to stick to it. So, of course, we wanted a pattern that we thought was responsible in the first instance. The teacher contract was the first major contract. We put together a combination of pieces to get to a fair outcome, and then every contract that thereafter was patterned on it. Because there were out years, back years, that were farther back than almost any other union, we had to construct a way to compensate for those past years. So
Okay.
that's where some of those
I get it.
elements were included.
I get it, but in 2015, there's a lump sum of 12.5% of what?
Okay, and what I do not ever want to do is give you a detail I cannot specifically explain, so I will get a letter from our Labor Relations Commissioner detailing each element of the contract deal.
Okay, but if one of the issues, obviously, we are at a point where we're determining whether to continue mayoral control. And if there is something that's done while there's mayoral control, maybe that could change somebody's mind that maybe you're not as fiscally sound as you may think you are. And since we're sending so much money out every year at the state, I think it's a relevant issue. And so when I see a 1% increase in 2015, but then see 12.5% lump sum of something, it sounds a hell of a lot more than 1%. And then when it gets to be 25% of something in 2019, it's 2018, it's certainly more than the 3%. So that would be pretty important to me.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you. I would say it this way. When that contract was agreed upon, I think it was May 2014, it got an immense amount of scrutiny from rating agencies, from fiscal monitors, from all levels of government. And the response to it also included an unprecedented amount of healthcare savings, which, as you know, is one of the #1 areas we have to address if we're going to create fiscal stability for the long term. I can safely say to you that across the spectrum, and this also was, I think, true in the business community, there was a sense that it was a fair contract, and we'll get you the exact delineation of, because those specific elements do not reflect the salary dynamics. I want you to see the salary progression narrowly.
Can you at least answer 25% of what?
Again, I'm in the interest of making sure I never give you an imprecise answer. I'm not going to offer it until...
Maybe this guy knows.
Sharif, do you want to give an answer? I would welcome you into the proceedings.
Handy at the moment.
Oh.
We'll get it to you. But
Maybe you
again,
better sit
Commissioner
back.
Lynn can give you a detail.
Very wise,
But I think the important point is this. I don't think there's any local government in the country that goes through more scrutiny than we do.
Okay.
We put together a labor deal. It was very strongly affirmed across the spectrum, and then became the pattern for all the other deals, which has ultimately saved the taxpayer a lot of money and allowed us fiscal stability. And I'm happy to go into more detail. I'll get the whole contract, and we're happy to discuss it with you.
Okay, that's great. The only other area I want to get into, I have a bunch of questions, but there's a lot of people here. Relating to charter schools, there's a requirement, I guess, that you, if space is available, I guess, there's some co-location that's required. Since this requirement went into effect, do you have an estimate as to how many charter schools were denied the ability to co-locate in a school?
We can get you the list of who applied and what the outcome was. There's been a number of charter schools that we have co-located. There have been some that, for the specific proposal, we could not fulfill as it was requested. In many cases, we found an alternative. We've said from the beginning, we're going to work with charter schools. We do ask them to work with us as well, because we have a set of standards that we have to achieve. By the way, and we talked earlier about the pre-K initiative, where we had very strong participation from our charter schools, very successful. So a lot of resources are going into our charter schools from the city budget, but we continue to make co-location decisions and trying to accommodate them when we can.
Do you
And
have?
very few were actually denied, and in some of the cases specifically was that they might not have been as inclusive as they should be. We expect schools to serve a fair amount of special needs kids and English language learners, but I think at this point, we're working much more cooperatively and working in a good way with most of our charter schools.
Okay, last question is, if we could get this information, I think in some cases there's an appeal process, if that's not, okay.
Absolutely.
So some cases, the city, for whatever reason, believed it was not appropriate for the co-location. An appeal, it was denied, so then the school appeals. I'd like to find out what percentage of those appeals were successful on behalf of the charter schools, to get an idea whether the,
I'll get back to you on that.
Yes, so
Okay.
then all of this, you're referring to the 2014 law change, so we'll get you the statistics
from
from
that.
that beginning of that following school year till now.
exactly. Okay, well, I better stop at this point, but thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and God bless you.
God bless you, Senator. Thank you.
Senator Krueger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your testimony. So many of my colleagues have already pointed out things I was going to ask you about, so it will be shorter.
Senator
Again,
Montgomery.
no, not that short, Carl. No. You know not to challenge me like that.
That's why I did it.
Again, I want to highlight the appreciation that so many of us have for the statistical improvements in the New York City public school system, both under your tenure and in fact under the previous tenure of Mayor Bloomberg, because I think most of us do realize when you look at the data, when you track what's happening in New York City public schools under mayoral control model versus the previous model, it's clearly a better model. I don't think any of us, I don't think you would probably think it's a perfect model. As one might argue, it's almost impossible to come up with a perfect public education system in this country. But I know, speaking for my district, my parents feel very strongly that the schools continue to improve. You know, the irony for my district is just the continuing fight for space to put more kids, because parents are choosing to stay in the city of New York, choosing public schools for their children, making more demands on your administration, on Chancellor Farina every day, because they believe in the public school system, and so they want better, because there isn't a parent in this country who doesn't want better for their children. So ironically, nothing causes more problems than success, because everybody just keeps coming to you with, and now we need X, and now we need Y, and now we need Z. And I think that's right, and it reflects the fact that people have a commitment to both our city and to our public school system. I also, just for the record, want to say I support mayoral control, even though I might fiddle with some things in it, but I want to highlight the importance of this legislature not continuing to play the game of giving you one-year extensions. There is no way to plan for a public school system for over 1 million children, not knowing from year to year to year whether or not your entire system is going to go into legal collapse every 12 months. So I urge my colleagues who are here today to recognize the importance of not allowing New York City to be left on a ledge that is particularly unhealthy for our public education system. So to turn this into a question, what would it mean if we literally kept going at a year-to-year model for the city and the Department of Education?
Look, it creates instability, and it means that as you're trying to do big changes, which we're trying to do, everything we're trying to do is to improve the schools fundamentally over years and years. I gave that example of getting all our kids to 3rd grade reading level over the next 10 years, a massive endeavor. It's never been attempted before. Anything that stands in the way of it is a disservice to our children. So if we don't even know what our governance structure will be in a year, it does not allow us to achieve all that we need to achieve. It doesn't allow us to put all the focus that we need to put into continually deepening these initiatives. And I think I appreciate your point a lot. To what end? If there was an alternative on the table that was better, I would debate that any day. But since I have not heard anyone come forward and say, the system we want to use is X, let's show you why that's a better system, it feels a lot of times like one hand clapping. Here's a system that has produced stunning results in 13 years' time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's deepen our commitment to it, and let's get to work fixing these big challenges in our schools.
It's just focus time. Every time you have to explain to them that you spend 2 days preparing, it's like the paperwork that principals sometimes. The time for a leader that's an education leader is to be in schools, is to be talking to parents, and this is diversion. And I think we need to stay based and focused on the work.
And I guess I would also just highlight the problem if Albany chose to try to micromanage public education in the city of New York. We can all give our examples of when we have frustrations, even when dealing with Department of Education or any other agency and trying to get things done. But even my colleague, John DeFrancisco's questions about co-location clearly show he's from Syracuse, which I'm sure has all its own issues, but to understand at the neighborhood level the issues of co-location of schools, why it sometimes works and why it sometimes doesn't, given the geographic realities and the space realities of schools, reflects the fact that Albany really shouldn't be making those decisions. I can speak for my district where literally the teachers and the parents and the principals in coordination fight to the death to keep bathroom space not being turned into educational space in a few of our schools because they're so desperate for space. And the concept that somebody outside of the city of New York would dictate, no, you have to make a decision to co-locate just because somebody else asked for the space. Again, there are certain roles for a state legislature, and they're very important ones, and there are certain roles that we have to leave to the local government and leave, in my opinion, to a model where it reports to the mayor and the mayor is held accountable for the actions that are taken.
We're going to
appreciate that.
videotape you
Yes.
and use that because I was just actually in one of your schools, in one of your districts, that is co-located. But those principals chose to be co-located. They decided ahead of time what they want to share between them. And in one particular case, their things that they're sharing is their special emphasis on special needs kids, and they don't want them moving from one school to the other. So the elementary school is in the building, very overcrowded, but the middle school is also in the building and taking on a large majority of those kids. So there are good things about co-location, but local is the right way to go.